It was just past 11 p.m. when my 5-year-old son's whimper yanked me out of a restless sleep. I bolted upright and pressed my palm to his forehead. It felt like touching a furnace. Panic clawed at my chest. Noah's fever was spiking again. The digital thermometer blinked a cruel 102.4 degrees Fahrenheit. We were out of children's ibuprofen. I'd given him the last dose hours ago. I scooped his burning little body into my arms and ran downstairs. The mansion was silent except for the distant hum of New York City lights beyond the windows. In the living room sat my husband, Caleb, dressed in a brand new tailored suit, hair slicked back, a packed Louis Vuitton suitcase beside the sofa. He was laughing at something on his phone. "Caleb, Noah's burning up. We have to go to the ER right now." He glanced up, irritation flashing across his perfect face. "Seriously, Lauren? It's just a fever. Give him medicine and put him back to bed. There is no medicine left. He could have a seizure." He sighed dramatically and stood, grabbing his suitcase. "Then call an Uber. I have plans." "Plans? We're supposed to leave for the Hamptons tomorrow. You promised Noah and me the weekend together." His lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. "The Hamptons? With you? Look at yourself, hair in a messy bun, yogurt stains on your shirt. You'd embarrass me. This trip is for me and Ava." Ava. The name hit me like a slap. His mistress. I'd known for months but stayed silent for Noah's sake. Tonight he threw it in my face without a shred of shame. Tears stunned my eyes. "You're leaving us for her while your son is this sick?" He was already dialing. "Hey babe, 5 more minutes, yeah, the crazy wife is throwing a fit." He looked at me like I was garbage. "Stay inside. Ruin my weekend and you'll regret it." I ran to the front door and stood in his way. He started the car, revved the engine. I didn't move. Furious, he jumped out, grabbed my hair, dragged me across the marble floor, and shoved Noah still in my arms, into the cold, forgotten basement storage room at the back of the house. The doors slammed. The bolts slid shut. In total darkness, holding my feverish child, I heard his car disappear into the night. Was this the cruelest hell a mother could ever know? Pitch black. The air in the basement was thick with mold, dust, and the sour smell of forgotten things. Noah's little body was on fire against my chest, his breaths coming in shallow, frightening gasps. I rocked him on the freezing concrete, whispering prayers into his damp curls while tears soaked us both. "Noah, baby, mommy's here. Just hold on." I felt around blindly for anything, a window, a tool, a miracle. My fingers brushed splintered wood, cardboard boxes, broken shelves. High above, a tiny sliver of moonlight leaked through nailed-up boards, mocking me with how close freedom was and how impossible. I peeled off my sweater, soaked it with my own tears, and pressed the damp cloth to his neck, his wrists, anywhere to steal even a degree of heat from him. He stirred, lips cracked and dry. "Daddy, hurts." Those 2 words shattered what was left of my heart. He still idolized the monster who had just locked us in here to rot. Memories flooded in like poison. 7 years ago, Caleb had been my fairy tale. A charming architect with kind eyes who said he didn't care that I came from nothing. He fought his wealthy family to marry me, promised the world. The first years were pure magic, late-night walks, foot rubs after long days, him crying happy tears when Noah was born. Then the company started bleeding money. His mother, Victoria, swooped in with her help and her endless venom about how I was never good enough. Caleb changed overnight. Cold words replaced kisses. Late nights became normal. And Ava appeared, young, glossy, everything I no longer was in his eyes. I had swallowed every insult, every betrayal, telling myself it was temporary. For Noah. For the family. But tonight proved how wrong I was. Noah suddenly went rigid in my arms, his eyes rolled back, his tiny body convulsing in a febrile seizure. I screamed into the darkness, pounding on the locked door until my fists bled. Noah! Stay with me. Somebody help us. Only silence answered. Then, a faint metallic scraping from the other side of the door. SCRRT, click, SCRRT. Someone was out there. Friend? Foe? Or something far worse? The scraping grew louder. Metal on metal, deliberate, angry. My blood turned to ice. I clutched Noah tighter, backing into the farthest corner, grabbing a jagged piece of broken shelf as a pathetic weapon. Was Caleb back to finish what he started? A burglar who'd seen the fight through the window? Or, worse, Ava sending someone to make sure we never spoke again? Bam! The heavy door flew inward with a deafening crack. Dim hallway light poured in, framing a tall silhouette holding a crowbar. I raised my makeshift club, ready to fight to the death for my son. Then the figure stepped forward. It was Victor, Caleb's father. Silk pajamas torn at the sleeve, silver hair wild, face twisted in pure horror. The man who had barely spoken 10 kind words to me in 7 years was panting like he'd run a marathon. Lauren? His voice broke. My God, what has that monster done? He dropped the crowbar with a clang and stumbled toward us. When his trembling hand touched Noah's cheek, he recoiled. He's on fire. We have to go, now. I couldn't move. Shock glued me to the floor. Dad, how did you? No questions. He ripped off his robe, wrapped it around Noah, and lifted my unconscious boy like he weighed nothing. Hospital. Move! I staggered after him on numb legs. The living room still smelled of Caleb's cologne and 2 half-drunk glasses of red wine, one smeared with bright lipstick. Victor didn't even glance at them. He stormed straight to the garage, laid Noah gently in the back seat of his Bentley, and floored it into the night. As the mansion disappeared behind us, he finally spoke, voice raw with rage and guilt. I couldn't sleep. Saw Caleb drive off, but it wasn't you in the car with him. It was her. Something felt wrong. I searched the house. Heard you crying through the cellar door. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. I've been blind, Lauren. Too blind. I thought he was just stressed. I never imagined my own son could do something this evil. Then his phone rang, unknown number, speaker on. Sir, are you the emergency contact for Caleb Hayes? There's been a serious accident on the Long Island Expressway. It's critical. The world went silent. Karma had just dialed the wrong number, or exactly the right one. The car swerved violently when the caller said critical. Victor's face drained of color. For a second I thought we'd crash too. I grabbed the wheel, screaming his name until he snapped out of it and slammed the brakes right in front of the ER doors. Noah was rushed inside on a gurney. I ran after him, legs shaking, while Victor stood frozen in the corridor, phone still dangling from his hand. Minutes later, a second team of doctors wheeled in another stretcher. Caleb. Unconscious, face covered in blood, tubes already down his throat. A nurse barked, car versus guardrail, high speed, no seatbelt. I stared at the man who'd locked us in a tomb less than an hour ago. Now he looked small, broken, almost human. A twisted part of me felt nothing. No pity. No satisfaction. Just a hollow, echoing silence where love used to live. Victor finally moved. He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. Go to Noah. I'll handle this side. I shook my head. I'm staying with my son. The words came out colder than I expected. Victor noticed. Something like respect flickered in his tired eyes. We waited. 2 sets of red in-surgery lights glowed like evil eyes down the hallway, one for my burning child, one for my dying husband. After the longest 90 minutes of my life, Noah's doctor emerged, pulling off his mask with a tired smile. He's stable. Febrile seizure from a nasty virus. We've broken the fever and he's breathing on his own. He'll need observation, but he's out of danger. I collapsed against the wall, sobbing in relief. Victor hugged me for the first time ever, his big frame shaking. Then he handed me a small velvet pouch. Take these. Inside, a brass key and a folded note. Safe in my study. Combination is Noah's birthday. Deeds, company seal, stock certificates, everything. From tonight forward, you run this family. Not Caleb. Not Victoria. You. I stared at him, stunned. He met my eyes, voice like iron. I was silent too long. Never again. Protect yourself and my grandson. No one touches you two anymore. Just then a nurse came running. Mr. Hayes. The woman claiming to be the patient's wife is here, she's screaming in the lobby. I wasn't the one screaming. Ava had arrived, wearing the red dress she'd planned to wear in the Hamptons. The lobby of the ER had turned into a circus. Ava stood in the center in a skin-tight crimson dress and 6-inch heels, mascara running down her cheeks theatrically while she screamed at the security guards. I'm his wife. Let me through. Do you know who I am? My husband is dying in there. Every head turned. Phones came out. Someone whispered, that's the mistress from the tabloids. Victor's face turned to granite. He marched forward, I followed right behind, Noah's tiny hand still warm in mine even though he was sleeping upstairs in pediatrics. Ava spotted us and her crocodile tears dried instantly. She threw herself at Victor, clutching his arm. Daddy! Thank God you're here. These people won't let me see Caleb. I'm his wife, I have rights. Victor peeled her manicured fingers off him like they were diseased. The only wife my son has is standing right here. He pulled me forward and raised my hand like I'd just won a prize fight. Lauren Hayes. Mother of his child. The woman he locked in a basement tonight with a dying 5-year-old. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones tilted higher. Ava's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's a lie. Caleb loves me. He was leaving her. Victor's laugh was ice cold. Then explain why the only person he almost killed tonight was his real family. At that exact moment the ICU doors swung open. The surgeon stepped out, mask dangling. Family of Caleb Hayes? We moved as one. Ava tried to shove past me, security caught her wrists. The doctor looked exhausted. We saved his life. Severe traumatic brain injury. He's breathing, heart's beating, but the damage is catastrophic. Best case scenario, persistent vegetative state. He may never wake up. Ava let out a piercing wail, and no. He promised me everything. The houses, the cars, the life. She lunged for the doors again, screaming about money while guards dragged her away. Her mask didn't just slip, it shattered on the marble floor. Victor turned to me, eyes blazing. Take Noah home tomorrow. The house, the company, the accounts, everything is yours now. I'm done protecting monsters. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel like the unwanted orphan bride. I felt like the queen who had just inherited the kingdom. Days blurred into weeks inside the hospital walls. Half my life was spent in the bright, beeping pediatric wing holding Noah's hand while he bounced back to his giggling self. The other half was in the dim ICU, staring at the stranger wearing my husband's face, tubes, monitors, and the endless mechanical hiss of a ventilator keeping a hollow shell alive. I didn't visit Caleb out of love. Love had died screaming in that basement. I went because he was still Noah's father, and because some tiny, stubborn part of me needed to see the price of betrayal with my own eyes. Victoria, my mother-in-law, slithered in and out like a ghost, always when I wasn't there. She never once asked about Noah. Her world had shrunk to one bed and one comatose son. Then one afternoon Victor walked into Noah's room carrying a thick folder and a look I'd never seen on him before: pride. "Time to come home, Lauren." "Home?" I laughed bitterly. "That house is a prison." "Not anymore." He placed the folder in my hands. "You're not going back as the tolerated daughter-in-law. You're going back as the owner. I've transferred everything into your name, quietly, legally, irreversibly. Board votes are scheduled. You will sit at the head of the table." I stared at him. "I don't know how to run a multi-million-dollar company." "You will learn. And you'll be better at it than any of us ever were, because you actually have a soul." That same day Noah was discharged, cheeks pink again, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. We pulled up to the mansion gates. Victoria was waiting on the front steps like a dragon guarding her cave, arms crossed, lips curled. "Finally decided to crawl back?" she sneered. "Thought you'd milk the hospital drama a little longer?" I stepped out of the car, Noah's hand in mine, and met her glare without flinching. "This is my house now, Victoria. Noah's room is exactly where it's always been. I don't need your permission to walk through my own front door." Behind me, Victor's voice boomed. "And if you ever raise your voice to them again, you'll be the one looking for a new place to live." Victoria's mouth opened, then snapped shut when she saw the security team already changing the gate codes. Round one belonged to me. But I knew a wounded snake bites hardest. The first month felt like walking through a minefield in stilettos. I woke at 5 a.m., kissed a sleeping Noah, and was in the office by 7. Victor sat beside me every day like a grizzled war general, teaching me how to read balance sheets, spot poison contracts, and smell corporate lies from a mile away. At first the executives smirked behind my back. The little housewife thinks she can play CEO. I let them smirk. Then I started signing their paychecks. One morning I opened a file that made my stomach drop. A company called Lux Horizon Interiors had been receiving $80,000 a month for 2 years labeled design consulting. No invoices. No deliverables. Just Caleb's signature on every transfer. I knew that company name. It was printed on the business card Ava once accidentally left in Caleb's coat pocket. Victor looked over my shoulder and went very quiet. "Keep digging," he said. But quietly. That night I found more. A Soho penthouse deed in Ava's name, paid for with company funds. A Porsche registered to her. Private jet fuel billed as client entertainment. All stamped approved by my loving husband. Then the security footage arrived. Timestamp, the exact evening Caleb locked us in the basement. Clear 4K video of him and Ava laughing in the private elevator, his suitcase in one hand, her waist in the other. They disappeared into their apartment for hours. He left alone, frantic, speeding toward the Hamptons Lie, and straight into the guardrail. I closed the laptop with shaking hands. The affair wasn't the worst part anymore. He had been robbing his own father blind to bankroll his side piece's fantasy life. I could have leaked everything right then, destroyed them both in one keystroke. But that would be too merciful. I wanted them to watch me take it all back, piece by piece, while they starved. First move, I froze every suspicious payment. Second move, I revoked Victoria's unlimited corporate black card in the middle of her Bergdorf shopping spree. Her scream over the phone was pure music. "You'll pay for this, you greedy little." I hung up and smiled for the first time in weeks. They had poked the wrong mama bear. They didn't wait long to strike back. It started as whispers in the office corridors. "She's the one who drove him to the crash. Sleeping with the staff while her husband fights for his life. Poor Victoria, thrown out like trash by that gold-digging witch." I ignored it at first. Sticks and stones. Then one Tuesday morning I walked into the executive lobby and every screen, TVs, employee phones, the digital billboard across the street, was blasting the same headline. Billionaire in coma, cruel wife's secret affair and ruthless power grab exposed. A national tabloid had splashed my face on the cover next to a grainy photo of me and David, my loyal young VP, leaving the office late, captioned "Midnight trysts while husband clings to life." Another photo showed Victoria sobbing outside the mansion gates, elderly mother evicted by heartless daughter-in-law. And the worst, a stolen hospital photo of Caleb hooked to machines, abandoned by the woman who vowed to love him. The article claimed I'd been cheating for years, that Caleb discovered it, got distraught, and that's why he crashed. Pure fiction, but the internet swallowed it whole. Within hours, #Lauren the Viper was trending. My inbox exploded with hate mail. Partners delayed contracts. The stock dipped 8%. That afternoon, I picked Noah up from kindergarten. He walked out alone, head down, eyes red. A little boy shouted, "Your mom's a bad lady." My mommy said so. Noah ran into my arms and buried his face in my coat. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not into tears, but into cold, diamond-hard resolve. That night Victor stormed into the study, slamming a stack of printouts on the desk. "They've gone too far. We sue for defamation." "Now?" I shook my head slowly. "No. A lawsuit is what they want, drama, cameras, more headlines. We don't fight in their mud." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Then how?" I smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't a nice smile. "We give them exactly what they're begging for, a family meeting. Everyone. Elders, press, the whole circus. And we let them hang themselves live on camera." The trap was set. The family meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon in the grand oak-paneled drawing room of the Hayes estate, the same room where engagements, funerals, and hostile takeovers had been announced for 3 generations. Today it would host a public execution. I wore a simple cream silk dress, hair in a low knot, no jewelry except my wedding ring, for irony. I looked like the grieving wife everyone expected. Perfect. Victoria arrived first, leaning heavily on a cane, eyes swollen from tears, dressed in head-to-toe black like a mafia widow. Ava followed 10 minutes later in a modest navy sheath dress, clutching a single white rose, playing the role of the misunderstood close friend. The elders, uncles, aunts, distant cousins who controlled voting shares, filed in, murmuring about the scandal, throwing me pitying glances. They still believed every lie. Then the front gates mysteriously opened. A swarm of reporters and photographers poured in, tipped off by an anonymous text. Flashes exploded. Livestream phones went up. Victoria's lips curled into a tiny, triumphant smile. She thought this was her doing. I stood calmly at the head of the room. "Thank you all for coming. Since the press is already here, let's clear the air once and for all. Transparency for the family name." Victoria seized the floor first, voice trembling with rehearsed grief. "This woman seduced my husband while my son lay dying. She's stolen our company, thrown me out of my home, frozen my cards. She's a monster." Ava dabbed her eyes. "I tried to warn Caleb. Lauren threatened to leave him penniless if he didn't divorce her. He was heartbroken the night of the accident." The elders gasped. Cameras zoomed. Twitter was already exploding. I waited until the room reached peak outrage. Then I smiled, soft and deadly. Beautiful performance. Oscar-worthy. But every good play needs a second act. I nodded to David in the corner. The lights dimmed. A massive screen lowered from the ceiling. "Allow me to introduce the real stars of the show." The first slide appeared, bank transfers totaling millions from the company to Lux Horizon Interiors, Ava's company. Next, the Soho penthouse deed in her name. Then, crystal-clear security footage of Caleb and Ava tangled together in the elevator, his suitcase and frame, time-stamped the night he locked us in the basement. The room went dead silent. Victoria turned the color of spoiled milk. The screen kept rolling. Next slide, a secretly recorded phone call between Ava and the sleazy tabloid reporter Rick. Ava's voice, sugary sweet, make her look like the devil. The crueler the better. 10,000 extra if you get photos of her with that young VP. I want the whole world to hate her. Rick laughing, done. Once she's ruined, the company's mine through Caleb. Don't forget my cut of the Hamptons house. The elders' faces turned from shock to volcanic fury. Victoria tried to stand, mouth working soundlessly. Her cane clattered to the floor. I turned to her, voice soft but carrying to every microphone. And you, dear mother-in-law, remember the day you stormed out screaming I was seizing everything? Audio played, her own venomous rant recorded on my phone. She thinks with Caleb gone she can steal the family fortune. Victor's voice followed. From this moment, Lauren decides everything. You have no say. The room erupted. One elder, a silver-haired aunt who'd once called me that charity case, stood up shaking. Victoria. Ava. You have shamed this family beyond repair. She turned to the others. I move we strip Victoria of all privileges and shares immediately. And this creature, she pointed at Ava, is banned from every Hayes property for life. Votes were unanimous. Hands shot up like guillotines. Ava finally found her voice, a hysterical screech. You can't do this. Caleb promised me everything. The money, the cars, the life. She lunged at me, nails out. Security caught her midair. Victoria collapsed, clutching her chest, wailing as if someone had died. Well, her empire just did. Cameras flashed like lightning. Live feeds exploded. #AvaExposed trended worldwide in 6 minutes. Reporters swarmed the two women as security dragged them out. Miss Walker, how much company money did you steal? Mrs. Hayes, did you know your son was embezzling for his mistress? The front doors slammed behind them. The mansion had never sounded so quiet, or so clean. I looked at Victor. He gave me the smallest, proudest nod I'd ever seen. The villains were broke, banished, and broadcast to the world in glorious HD. But while I was busy slaying dragons in the drawing room, David's text lit up my phone. Lauren, we just found a $2 million wire to Ava from a company called Apex Holdings. Owner, Marcus Hayes. Caleb's cousin. The one fired for theft 3 years ago. And their biggest project? The exact Hamptons land Caleb was driving to the night of the crash. This wasn't the end. This was the doorway to something much darker. I didn't go home after the family meeting. I went straight to the office, locked the door, and spread every new file across the conference table like a murder board. Apex Holdings. Registered 6 months after Marcus Hayes, Caleb's thuggish cousin, was fired for stealing rebar and concrete from our sites. A nobody with a rap sheet suddenly running a company worth hundreds of millions? Impossible without a very powerful, very silent partner. Their crown jewel project, a luxury oceanfront resort on a prime stretch of Hampton's coastline. The same stretch Caleb had promised to take Noah and me to for a family weekend. The same road he was speeding down when his car wrapped around a guardrail. David pulled highway CCTV stills. 10 minutes before impact, a black unmarked pickup truck forced Caleb's Porsche to the shoulder. 2 men got out. One had a jagged scar across his cheek, Marcus. They spoke for 90 seconds. Caleb looked terrified. Then he floored it again, straight into catastrophe. This wasn't road rage. This was a message. Or a hit that didn't quite finish the job. I dug deeper into Apex's funding. Shell companies in Cyprus fake construction loans laundered cash from our own projects Caleb had overseen. He hadn't just been cheating on me, he'd been using the family company as a personal ATM for an organized crime syndicate that bought land with threats, broken knees, and the occasional disappearing farmer. Victor walked in at 2 a.m., took one look at the board, and aged 10 years in 10 seconds. My God! Caleb didn't fall in with criminals. He became their golden goose. I met his eyes. And someone just decided the goose was talking too much. The next morning I did what any sane woman would do after discovering her husband was a money-laundering adulterer possibly marked for death. I called the police. The real ones. The special investigative unit that doesn't answer to anyone with a Hampton zip code. Then I went to the one man who might still hold the final key. Caleb. He was awake now, barely. Eyes open, tracking movement, but no words yet. I leaned close to his ear. Start talking, Caleb. Because whoever you stole from? They're coming back to finish what they started. And this time they might not miss. His heart monitor spiked. Tears rolled down his temples. He was terrified. Good. The ICU now looked like a maximum security prison. 2 armed private guards at the door, 24/7. Every nurse, every janitor, every doctor had to show ID twice. I wasn't taking chances. Whoever tried to turn Caleb into roadkill once could afford round 2. That same week the police raided Apex Holdings headquarters at dawn. Marcus Hayes, Scarface's cousin, was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming about lawyers. 30 others followed. Hard drives, burner phones, ledgers written in blood and bribes. The news called it the biggest real estate fraud bust in state history. But the kingpin, the real puppet master who had been hiding behind shell companies and offshore accounts, vanished. Yacht gone from the marina. Private jet cold on the tarmac. Like smoke. Then came the miracle nobody expected. Caleb blinked. Moved a finger. Then a hand. Doctors called it remarkable responsiveness. I called it a nightmare with good timing. He still couldn't speak, but his eyes followed me now. And every time I said the name Apex, pure terror flooded them. One afternoon Victoria slipped past the new security protocols. Someone looked the other way for an old lady with tears. I found her in his room, bent over the bed, whispering. I froze in the doorway. She was holding a syringe. Hidden camera in the flower arrangement caught everything. She kissed his forehead, sobbing. I warned you not to play with those people, baby. They'll kill us all if you wake up. They'll kill Noah. I have to finish this. For all our sakes. She reached for the 4-line. Police burst in before the needle touched plastic. Victoria collapsed, screaming, they forced me. They said they'd murder my grandson. In the interrogation room she sang like a broken music box. Names, dates, threats delivered by masked men. She had known everything for years and stayed silent for the money, the status, the illusion. She tried to murder her own son to save her own skin. Even the detectives looked sick. And still, the biggest shark was swimming free. 3 weeks after Victoria's arrest attempt, the police finally had a face for the ghost. I was in Caleb's room, watching him try to form words with half a mouth, when David burst in without knocking. We got him. Montauk safehouse raid at dawn. Yacht was 2 minutes from international waters. He slid a photograph across the blanket. The man in the orange jumpsuit being led off a helicopter looked like any other distinguished 60-something businessman, salt and pepper hair, expensive watch, arrogant jaw. Except I knew that face from 20 years of family Christmas cards. Reginald Reggie Langford. Victor's oldest friend. Best man at his wedding. Silent partner in the company's very first project. The man who used to bounce me on his knee when I was the broke college girl Caleb brought home. Reggie had been the shadow funding Apex. Every dirty land grab, every laundered dollar, every threat whispered in the dark, his signature was hidden 5 layers deep. Detectives told us the story in a cold conference room. Caleb had started skimming small. Reggie noticed, offered to help hide it in exchange for a cut and access to our legitimate contracts. One favor became a pipeline. When Caleb got greedy, or scared, and started talking about coming clean. Reggie ordered the accident. The scarred pickup truck? Reggie's personal enforcer. Victoria's poison syringe? Delivered by Reggie's people with a photo of Noah at school and a note, "Finish it or we will." Reginald Langford wasn't just a criminal mastermind. He was family. Chosen family. The betrayal went soul deep. Victor aged 20 years in that room. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was barely a whisper. I built this empire with him. Blood, sweat, every brick. And he used it to try to murder my grandson. That night Victor disappeared from the mansion. No one saw him for 48 hours. When he came back, his eyes were dead. He'll never see daylight again, was all he said. The trial was swift. Reggie took a plea to avoid death row. Life without parole. Every asset seized. Every offshore account frozen. The Langford name erased from country clubs and charity galas overnight. But one loose thread still twitched on the hospital bed. Caleb was speaking now. Short, painful sentences. And the first full one he managed, looking straight at me, was, I'm sorry, Lauren, for everything. I stood at the foot of Caleb's bed, arms crossed, watching the man who once promised me forever struggle to string 6 words together. I'm sorry. Lauren, please. The monitors beeped steadily. Outside the window, autumn leaves fell like slow-motion confetti over a funeral. Sorry. 2 syllables that came 5 years too late. I leaned in until our faces were inches apart. You locked your feverish child and me in a basement so you could go screw your mistress in a penthouse you bought with stolen money. You turned your father's legacy into a criminal piggy bank. You almost got us all murdered. Sorry doesn't even buy a cup of coffee, Caleb. His eyes filled with tears that rolled into his ears. Noah, let me see Noah. That was the only card he had left. I thought of my son's face every time he asked why Daddy couldn't come home. I thought of the nightmares that still woke him screaming. I thought of the little boy who drew pictures of a family that no longer existed. I made my decision right there, cold and clear as winter glass. You will see him. Supervised. Once a month. You will never be alone with him. You will never call yourself his father again. You're the man who hurt Mommy very badly. And the day he says he doesn't want to come anymore, it stops. Forever. Caleb closed his eyes, relief and shame fighting on his ruined face. I straightened up. Divorce papers are being drafted. You will sign everything over, assets, custody, the works. You keep the rehab center bed I'm paying for. That's the last gift you'll ever get from me. He managed a nod. 2 days later the papers were signed by shaky hand. I walked out of that room for the last time as Lauren Hayes. When I stepped into the hallway, Victor was waiting with an umbrella and a small smile. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life, Madam Chairman. For the first time in years, I smiled back and meant it. The company, now rebranded Hayes Horizon Group, had tripled in value. We weren't just building buildings anymore, we were building affordable housing, green waterfronts, community centers in neighborhoods the old regime would have bulldozed for profit. Every board meeting started with a photo of Noah on the screen and the question, is this decision good for kids like him? The stock market loved ethics when they were profitable. I sat at the head of the table in a navy suit that cost more than my old wedding dress, hair in a sleek chignon, voice calm and final. The same executives who once laughed at the housewife now waited for my nod before they breathed. Victoria lived in a modest cottage on the edge of the estate, paid for by me, guarded by people who reported to me. She spent her days tending roses and writing letters she never mailed. Guilt is a heavier chain than any prison. Ava served 38 months in a federal facility for fraud and money laundering. Last I heard, her new career was folding laundry and avoiding eye contact in the cafeteria. Reginald Langford and Marcus Hayes would die behind bars. The scarred enforcer took a plea and flipped on everyone. He got 15 years and a new face in witness protection. Caleb lived in a private rehabilitation villa overlooking the ocean, again, paid for by me. He could walk with a cane now, speak in full sentences on good days. Most of his memory of the crimes had been conveniently erased by trauma. Doctors called it selective amnesia. I called it cosmic justice. Once a month Noah and I visited. Noah, now 10, tall for his age, kind brown eyes that saw too much, would sit on the patio and tell his father about soccer scores, school projects, the stray cat he was trying to adopt. Caleb listened with the wide-eyed wonder of a child himself, smiling every time Noah called him Dad. I never corrected it. When Noah asked why we didn't live together anymore, I told him the truth in words he could carry. Sometimes grown-ups make very big mistakes and hurt the people they love. Daddy is still learning how to be better. We forgive because we're strong, not because the hurt disappears. Some days Noah hugged Caleb goodbye. Some days he didn't. Either way, we left lighter. One crisp Saturday morning in late October, Noah and I took our usual drive to the Seaside Rehab Center. The leaves were fire along the parkway, and Noah was humming along to whatever pop song 10-year-olds love these days. He was quiet for the last mile. Then he turned to me, all serious brown eyes. Mom, do we have to keep visiting Dad? I nearly swerved off the road. We had never missed a month. Not once. No, baby. We don't have to do anything you don't want. He nodded slowly, staring out the window. I think today should be the last time. He makes me sad now. And you smile more when we go to the aquarium instead. I pulled over, tears instantly burning. I cupped his perfect face. Are you sure? Yeah. He's not the dad in my drawings anymore. And that's okay. We have our own family now. You, me, Grandpa Victor, and Mr. Whiskers the cat. I laughed through the tears and hugged him so hard he squeaked. We turned the car around. I texted the center, cancel today's visit. Permanently. That afternoon we went to the aquarium. Noah pressed his nose to the jellyfish tank, mesmerized by the glowing creatures floating in their own quiet universe. Mom, look. They got hurt and just grew new parts. Like us. I knelt beside him, throat tight. Exactly like us, sweetheart. When we got home, Victor was waiting on the front steps with 2 tickets in his hand. Thought you might need these, he said gruffly. Front row seats to the Knicks game next week. Just the 3 of us. Noah hooped and tackled his grandfather's legs. Later that night, after Noah was asleep, I stood on the balcony of the master bedroom, my bedroom now, and looked out over the city lights. I was 35 years old. Divorced. A CEO. A single mother. And for the first time in my adult life, completely, utterly free. I didn't go looking for love again. Love found me in the quiet places. His name was Julian Reyes, the architect we hired to design the new children's hospital wing the company was funding. Tall, dark-haired, with kind eyes and hands that sketched dreams on napkins. He was the only person in every meeting who spoke directly to me instead of over me. One rainy Thursday he stayed late to finish a model. I brought him coffee. He looked up and smiled like I was the only person in the universe. You know, he said, most people build walls after they've been hurt. You build hospitals. That's extraordinary. I laughed it off. He didn't. Coffee turned into late-night takeout in the empty boardroom. Takeout turned into Sunday mornings at the farmer's market with Noah racing ahead to pick the ripest strawberries. Julian never tried to be Noah's new dad. He just showed up with soccer balls and terrible dad jokes and let Noah decide the pace. 6 months in, Noah crawled into my bed at 3 a.m. Mom, is it okay if I like Julian more than just a friend? I kissed his forehead. It's more than okay, Mijo. A year after that, Julian proposed on the rooftop of the nearly finished children's hospital at sunset. No ring hidden in dessert, no flash mob, just him, me, and the city lights below. I don't want to replace anything that was broken, he said, voice steady. I just want to build something new with you. If you'll let me. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We married quietly on a beach in Tulum, Noah as ring bearer, Victor walking me down the aisle with tears he refused to acknowledge, 20 of our closest people, barefoot in the sand. That night Julian whispered against my hair, "Thank you for letting me love both of you." I finally understood. Real love doesn't erase the scars. It builds beautiful things on top of them. Wedding night. The villa in Tulum was lit only by candles and moonlight spilling through open walls onto the ocean. Noah was fast asleep in the next room, stuffed from cake and exhausted from dancing with his new Uncle David. Julian carried me over the threshold like we were 25 and reckless. We laughed, we kissed, we fell onto the bed in a tangle of white linen and salt air. And then he stopped. "Lauren, there's something I need to tell you before we go any further." My heart stuttered. In my experience, midnight confessions never ended well. He reached into his suitcase and pulled out a small velvet box. Not the ring box that was already on my finger. This one was older, worn, the color of midnight blue. He opened it. Inside was a photograph, a little boy, maybe 4 years old, with Julian's exact eyes and crooked smile. "My son, Mateo," he said quietly. "He lives in Mexico City with his mother. We were never married. She didn't want the nomadic architect life. I see him every school holiday, send everything I can. I should have told you sooner, but I was terrified you'd think I came with too much baggage." I stared at the photo, then at the man in front of me who was shaking like a leaf. "Julian." I took the box, closed it gently, and set it on the nightstand. "You think a child is baggage? Noah and I are literally the survivors of a crime syndicate. We come with actual police files." He laughed, but it was half a sob. I cupped his face. "Bring him next weekend. Noah's been begging for a brother anyway." The relief that broke across his face was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He kissed me like a drowning man finally reaching shore. Later, much later, tangled in sheets and moonlight, he whispered against my neck. "Two broken families, making one whole one." I smiled into the dark. That's how the strongest ones are built. The first time all 4 of us were under one roof was Christmas Eve, 2 years after the wedding. Julian's son Mateo, 13, lanky, shy, and obsessed with video games, flew in from Mexico City clutching a suitcase and a mountain of nerves. Noah, 11 now, captain of his soccer team and professional little brother material, had spent weeks planning the epic welcome. We picked Mateo up at JFK. Noah bolted across the arrivals hall and tackled him with a hug that nearly took them both to the floor. "I already set up the second controller. And Mom made your bed with the Spider-Man sheets because you're still a kid, technically." Mateo laughed, a startled, delighted sound, and just like that the ice shattered. That night the house smelled of tamales, Julian's mother's recipe, cinnamon, and pine from the 12-foot tree Victor insisted on cutting down himself. The boys turned the living room into a Fortnite battlefield, screaming in a chaotic mix of English and Spanish while Victor pretended to be scandalized by their violent games but secretly loved every second. At midnight we opened one present each, family tradition. Mateo's eyes went wide when he unwrapped the new gaming laptop Julian and I had hidden for months. Noah got the telescope he'd been begging for. Julian opened a small box from the boys, 2 handmade coupons. One read "Free Dad Hugs Anytime" and the other "Permission to Embarrass Us at School Events, 3 uses left." I saved my gift for last. Julian handed me a thick envelope, trying to look casual. Inside, adoption papers. For both boys. Making me officially Mateo's mother too, and Julian officially Noah's father, in every way the law allowed. I couldn't even speak. I just cried the ugly kind of happy tears while 4 sets of arms wrapped around me at once. Later, when the boys finally passed out on the couch mid-movie, Julian and I stood on the balcony watching snow dust the city. "For stockings on the mantle this year," he whispered, kissing my temple. "Think we can handle 6 someday?" I laughed into his shoulder. "Let's survive teenagers first." 10 years after the night I was locked in that cellar, I went back. Not to the mansion, we had sold it years ago, turned it into a women's shelter. I went to the actual basement. The shelter director gave me the key and left me alone. The room had been gutted and renovated, bright paint, soft lighting, toys in baskets, a mural of sunflowers on one wall. Where the broken furniture once piled, there were now comfortable chairs for counseling sessions. Where I once huddled freezing with my dying child, mothers now sat safely with theirs. I walked to the exact spot on the floor where Noah had seized in my arms. I knelt. And I did something I had never allowed myself to do in all these years. I cried for the woman I used to be. The terrified, powerless, broken girl who thought that night would be our end. I cried until my ribs hurt. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the original key Victor had given me that night, the one to the safe that changed everything. I had kept it on my keyring for a decade like a talisman. I placed it on the floor in the center of the sunflower mural. Stood up. And spoke out loud to the empty room. "This is not where we died. This is where we were reborn." I left the key there. Let some other woman find it one day and remember, doors that were meant to trap you can become doors someone else walks through to freedom. When I stepped outside, Julian was waiting by the car with a thermos of coffee and that quiet smile that still made my knees weak. "Everything okay?" he asked. I looked back at the house one last time. Everything is perfect. I realized I had stopped surviving the day I walked into the annual shareholders gala and didn't feel like an imposter. Red carpet. Flashbulbs. Reporters shouting my name, not the wife of, not the scandal woman, just Lauren Reyes, CEO. I wore emerald silk that cost more than most people's cars, Mateo on one arm, Noah on the other, Julian behind me with his hand warm on the small of my back. The boys were in miniature tuxes, complaining that bow ties were itchy torture devices. Inside the ballroom, 500 people stood and applauded when I took the stage. Not polite golf claps. Real applause. The kind that rattles chandeliers. I didn't talk about profit margins. I clicked to the first slide, a photo of the old basement, before renovation. Then the same room now, filled with laughing mothers and children. "That room was supposed to be our grave," I said, voice steady. "Tonight it's a nursery for a domestic violence shelter that has helped 3,847 women and children start over. That is the only return on investment I care about." The room went silent, then erupted again. Later, an elderly investor I'd once overheard call me that mail-order bride came up, eyes wet. "My granddaughter was in an abusive marriage. Your shelter saved her life." "Thank you, Mrs. Reyes." I hugged him. I didn't even flinch. On the way home, the boys asleep in the back seat, Julian laced his fingers through mine. "You didn't just rebuild the company tonight. You rebuilt the definition of power." I looked out at the city I used to fear. Power isn't never being afraid. Power is being terrified and doing it anyway, until one day you wake up and realize the fear is gone. I was no longer the woman who begged on her knees in the dark. I was the woman who turned on all the lights. It was a random Tuesday night in November, 15 years to the day since that cellar door slammed shut. The boys were at a sleepover, Julian was in Chicago for a conference, and I was alone in our penthouse, curled on the sofa with a glass of wine and old case files I'd meant to shred years ago. My phone rang, private number. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Hello?" A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a decade, raspy, hesitant, older. "Lauren, it's Caleb." I sat up so fast wine sloshed onto my silk pajamas. He wasn't supposed to have this number. He wasn't supposed to be able to make calls without supervision. How did you? I'm dying, Lauren. The room tilted. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks, maybe less. The rehab center had called Victor that morning. Victor had chosen not to tell me yet. Caleb's voice cracked. I know I lost every right to ask anything of you the night I locked that door. But I'm asking anyway. One last time. Let me see Noah. Let me say goodbye while I still have words. I closed my eyes. 15 years of therapy, boardrooms, building an empire on the ashes of what he burned, and still, the sound of his voice took me straight back to that concrete floor. I thought of Noah at 16, tall, kind, fiercely protective of his little brother Mateo, already talking about studying architecture like his stepdad. I thought of the man Caleb had become in that quiet seaside room, harmless, repentant, forgotten by the world. Send me the date, I finally said. We'll be there. I hung up before he could thank me. Julian came home at 2 a.m., found me still on the sofa staring at the city. He didn't ask questions. Just wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and held me until sunrise. Sometimes mercy isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest thing a person can do. It was a random Tuesday night in November, 15 years to the day since that cellar door slammed shut. The boys were at a sleepover, Julian was in Chicago for a conference, and I was alone in our penthouse, curled on the sofa with a glass of wine and old case files I'd meant to shred years ago. My phone rang, private number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Hello? A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a decade, raspy, hesitant, older. Lauren, it's Caleb. I sat up so fast wine sloshed onto my silk pajamas. He wasn't supposed to have this number. He wasn't supposed to be able to make calls without supervision. How did you? I'm dying, Lauren. The room tilted. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks, maybe less. The rehab center had called Victor that morning. Victor had chosen not to tell me yet. Caleb's voice cracked. I know I lost every right to ask anything of you the night I locked that door. But I'm asking anyway. One last time. Let me see Noah. Let me say goodbye while I still have words. I closed my eyes. 15 years of therapy, boardrooms, building an empire on the ashes of what he burned, and still, the sound of his voice took me straight back to that concrete floor. I thought of Noah at 16, tall, kind, fiercely protective of his little brother Mateo, already talking about studying architecture like his stepdad. I thought of the man Caleb had become in that quiet seaside room, harmless, repentant, forgotten by the world. Send me the date, I finally said. We'll be there. I hung up before he could thank me. Julian came home at 2 a.m., found me still on the sofa staring at the city. He didn't ask questions. Just wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and held me until sunrise. Sometimes mercy isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest thing a person can do. We went on a gray December afternoon, just Noah and me. Caleb had been moved to a hospice room with wide windows facing the ocean. The cancer had eaten him down to bones and regret. Machines were gone, only morphine and memories remained. Noah, 16 now, voice deeper than his stepfather's, shoulders broad from years of defending his little brother on soccer fields, walked in first. He had asked to speak to Caleb alone for 5 minutes. I waited in the hallway, heart in my throat. Through the glass I watched my son pull a chair close, take the skeletal hand in both of his strong ones, and talk. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Caleb cry the way only a dying man can, silent, shaking, endless. When Noah came out his eyes were red but dry. He told me he was proud of the man I'm becoming. And that he understands if I never want to think of him again. I told him. I already forgave him a long time ago. Because hating him would mean letting him live in my head forever. And I have too much good stuff in there now. He hugged me hard. I'm okay, Mom. We're okay. Then it was my turn. I sat beside the bed. Caleb could barely keep his eyes open, but when he saw me they focused with everything he had left. You came, he rasped. I did. He tried to smile. The effort broke something in me I thought had healed years ago. I was a monster, he whispered. You became an angel. Thank you for letting our boy be extraordinary. I took his hand, paper-thin, cold. I didn't do it for you, I said softly. I did it in spite of you. A tear slid down his temple. Still, thank you. I leaned close so only he could hear. The cellar door is closed forever, Caleb. Rest now. His breathing slowed. The heart monitor beeped once, twice, then settled into a long, peaceful line. He died holding my hand, 15 years after he tried to bury me alive. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft, cleansing, final. Noah met me in the hallway. We didn't speak. We just walked out together into the quiet white, mother and son, free at last. 20 years after the night the cellar door slammed, I stood on a cliff in Big Sur watching the sun bleed gold into the Pacific. Noah, 25 now, freshly graduated from architecture school, was laughing as he chased his little sister along the shoreline. Yes, sister. Julian and I had one more surprise, a fierce, curly-haired 6-year-old named Paloma who came to us through foster adopt when she was 2. She calls Mateo her big brother and Noah her medium brother, and the boys let her get away with everything. Mateo, 23, was up on the deck grilling fish with Julian, arguing good-naturedly in rapid Spanish about whether the sauce needed more lime. Victor, 83, still refusing a cane, sat in an Adirondack chair holding my hand like he has every anniversary since that hospital corridor, whispering, "You saved us all, kid." The company is a global force for good now, building schools in earthquake zones, turning abandoned lots into solar-powered communities, funding shelters in 40 countries. My name is on university buildings, on children's hospitals, on scholarships for single mothers studying business. But none of that is what makes my chest ache with joy. It's the ordinary miracles. It's Paloma's sticky fingers in mine. It's Noah texting me photos from his first solo job site with the caption "Building homes that will never have cellars." It's Mateo calling me mama without hesitation. It's Julian waking me every morning with coffee and the same words, "Good morning, my warrior queen." It's knowing that the terrified woman who once pounded on a locked door in the dark became the woman who makes sure no other mother ever has to. The little girl who was told she wasn't enough grew up to be more than enough for an entire village of hearts. I squeeze Victor's hand. He squeezes back. Proud of you doesn't begin to cover it. The sun dips below the horizon. Noah scoops Paloma onto his shoulders. Mateo starts singing some ridiculous song. Julian pulls me into his arms and kisses my temple. And in that moment, with the ocean roaring its ancient approval, I finally understand. I didn't just survive the fire. I became the light that came after it. The cellar door has been gone for 2 decades. In its place stands a wide-open sky. And every sunrise belongs to us. The end. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. If this story touched you, hug the people you love a little tighter tonight. Some doors only open from the inside, and you hold the key. Sparkles.